Welcome to Mostly Mets, and it seems like we might be in the final day of the Kyle Tucker watch here. Obviously, there's been a ton of news over the last 24 hours, reports of contract offers, reports of interest, and it just seems like it's coming to a head. If it's not today, I think it will be tomorrow. It is coming sooner rather than later, next 24 to 48 hours, but I believe it'll be at some point today. Before I go over my thoughts on the situation and what I think is going to happen and how I would feel about that, I just want to go over the information that we have heard recently. I'm sure most of you know it, but some may not. The Mets offer is believed to be around 4 years and $200 million. That has been put out there by multiple sources. People feel as though the Mets have offered 4 years, $200 million. And according to Michael Marino, that original offer included no deferral. So it's a straight 4 years, $200 million. Now, obviously, we assume there's going to be opt-outs in that deal. But for 4 years, $200 million, the Mets are obviously making an aggressive push there. I think the opt-out should be after year 2, not year 1. Maybe that's a sticking point there. Maybe he wants an opt-out after every year, and the Mets say, well, if we're going to pay you all this money, we want a guarantee of at least 2 years, and then you can opt out. I don't know that. That's just my gut. That's what I would want. I wouldn't want him to be able to opt out of this deal after 1 year, after going through all this and really making a hard push for him. I just don't see that as likely, but you never know. If they want to get the deal done and he wants the opt-out after year 1, maybe they make it happen for him. Jon Heyman yesterday put the Mets as his number one landing spot for Kyle Tucker. He thought that they were kind of in the lead, and he put the Blue Jays third, the Dodgers second. I think that was kind of, there was nothing to that. That was like his gut or what he's been hearing. And then Mike Puma of the Post said yesterday that the Mets expected to hear back soon, and then later tweeted that it's actually going to be Thursday at the earliest, Thursday meaning today. And what I find interesting on this pursuit is we're not really hearing anything about the Dodgers. That definitely scares me a little bit. It's the quiet team. You know, they always say it's the quiet guy you got to look out for. We haven't heard anything about the Dodgers, and maybe they're just not being aggressive. Maybe they're just lurking. I don't know, but that freaks me out a little bit that we're hearing they're involved and we're hearing that they're interested, but there's no leaked offer of anything. So we also heard about Toronto. Last night, Jeff Passan said that Toronto may potentially be willing to go 10 years. Now, he didn't say they're going 10 years, and a lot of people took that and ran with it and said, oh, they're offering 10 years, he's gone. Well, Jeff Passan just was basically saying that they're the only team willing to go long-term and might meet his demand at 10 years. Doesn't mean that they have. Doesn't mean that there's a contract offer for that. It just means that they're the only team that's willing to go long. We also heard that Steve Cohen is involved in this free agent process. Now, I heard a lot of people say this just goes to show you Stearns has no idea what he's doing. He's not able to land the big fish. He needs Cohen's help at every turn. That's not the case here. I mean, maybe it is. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Steve Cohen in the past has said he likes to be involved in these things. He likes to put his personal touch on things. If you're going out there and trying to get a guy like Kyle Tucker, and he's going to be a big part of your team for at least a couple of seasons, you would hope, the owner wants to make sure that player knows his vision, knows what's going on, knows that ownership and front office are on the same page, that they're all pulling towards the same goal, and he likes to be personal with the players. He's not like a lot of other owners who kind of just go away from it and they say they don't want anything to do with it. Here's a check, go sign the players. No, he wants personal relationships with his players. We know that from Lindor and Soto. It was a big reason why Soto signed, because he said he loved that he was going to have a close relationship with Cohen and his family. And that's important to some guys. And Steve Cohen, it's important to him. And it's important to his family and the ownership group that they have a personal relationship with the players. And if you're David Stearns and you're going to spend $50 million a year on a player, you have to get the ownership involved. They have to meet with him. They have to talk to him. Steve Cohen has to want to give that guy $50 million a year. Like, that's not a $10 million deal for a reliever on a 1-year deal. You know, this is a big contract. It might be short term, but it's a lot of money. So the people criticizing Stearns because Cohen is involved is just, to me, that's ridiculous. I love the fact that we have Steve Cohen involved. I think it's an advantage that the Mets have because most players, not all, maybe Kyle Tucker doesn't care. Maybe he doesn't want anything to do with the Mets owner, doesn't want anything to do with the front office. He just wants to go out and play baseball. Maybe that's the fact. Maybe that's the case with him. But a lot of players, if they're going to commit to you, want to know that everyone's on the same page and want to know that the owner is involved and the owner has a vision for the team going forward. So this cannot be a negative. It's only a positive. I can't stand that people are trying to make this out to be a negative, but it is a very big positive. Now, the negative in all of this is there's been a lot of talk that the Mets are being used as leverage in this situation. They're being used as leverage to drive up the Blue Jays offer, maybe to get the Dodgers more involved. And honestly, I do have a feeling that that's the case in a lot of ways. And the reason that it looks like the Mets are being used here is because they're the only offers that are being leaked. We have not heard what the Blue Jays offer is. We hear that it's a long-term deal, but we don't know what the AAV is. We don't know how many years it's for. We've also known that the Blue Jays have been interested since the beginning of the offseason, and maybe they have the only offer out there. Maybe they're only offering 7 years and Tucker wants 10, and maybe they're only offering 33 AAV and he wants 40. Like, we don't know what that offer is. We don't even really know what Kyle Tucker is looking for. So I think the Mets being brought into this are now putting pressure on not only the Blue Jays to maybe add some more years and some more AAV to that deal, but maybe it's also bringing the Dodgers into it. Maybe the Dodgers have had kind of lukewarm interest. Maybe they're just lurking like we've heard. We've heard that the Dodgers are just in the background lurking to see what happens with Kyle Tucker, and they're willing to go on a short-term high AAV deal as well. I'm sure with deferrals and all that because that's the way they operate. But if you're Kyle Tucker's agent, you're going to put this information out. The Mets aren't leaking this out. The Mets aren't going to put out that they've offered $50 million a year. We don't even know for sure that that's an offer. That's just being reported. We have no real idea if that's the case. But if Kyle Tucker's agent puts that out, it puts that pressure on the Blue Jays. It puts the pressure on the Dodgers like, hey, we need to come up with a good offer. If the Mets are in at that high AAV, we need to come close or we need to do something here because it seems imminent that he's going to sign. So it brings the market up. It brings everyone together to try to make a deal or against each other to try to make a deal. So I don't think it's all bad to be used because the Mets still put a very competitive offer out there. If he wants a long-term deal, go to the Blue Jays. If he wants the short-term deal with a chance to go back into free agency in a couple of years at 31 years old and to maybe then get a 6, 7, 8-year deal, then do it. It's really up to him at this point. And I've also heard, and by the way, the Mets know that they're being used in that situation, right? They're not dumb. I'm not smarter than David Stearns or Steve Cohen in business to know that, like, I think I know this and people on Twitter know this and they don't. But that doesn't mean that they don't think they have a chance to get him. Because if their offer is the best one and he isn't completely against coming to New York and coming to the Mets, then they still have a chance to get him, whether they're being used or not. They still, if they have the best offer, they still have a chance. So I think that's a little bit overblown. But what I will also say is the Dodgers not being quiet is very suspicious to me. Are they actually involved? Is this pushing them into being involved? Is their presence being used to drive up the price, right? Are we hearing leaks that the Dodgers are interested because they're trying to drive up the price for the Mets and the Blue Jays? I don't know, more so than the Mets, I would think, because I don't think the Dodgers would touch the AAV that the Mets are willing to go. But is it there to drive up the price? I think that happened with Soto, right? We heard the whole time last year that the Dodgers were lurking and the Dodgers were interested. And it turns out the Dodgers were only interested at like $600 million or $550 million. They were not willing to go anywhere near where the Mets and the Yankees and even the Red Sox went. They just weren't. So I think the Dodgers are also possibly being used here. It seems like you don't really hear anything with them. So I don't know what this all means or if it's going to end up in the Mets' favor. I still have doubts. I'm not overly optimistic that the Mets will sign him. I still think it's probably more likely that he goes back to the Blue Jays, or goes to the Blue Jays, sorry. But they're going to have to overpay now. Now they're going to need to If it's 10 years, $350 plus million, yeah, he's probably going to the Blue Jays because he would get that security. $35 million a year over 10 years, it's $150 million more than what the Mets are offering over 4 years. So you take the money. You take the extra $150 million guaranteed, and I think that would end up making him go there. Now, I think it's probably going to have to be more than that. Maybe would the Mets go a fifth year here? I struggle to think that that's an advantage. I know a lot of people say the Mets should go 5 years or 6 years or 7 years, but then you're in that middle zone. I think you either need to be short or you need to be long. You need to be short with opt-outs or a rest of your career kind of contract. Being in that middle area doesn't really help you. And I think if you go to a fifth year, it's going to drive the AAV down because now you're getting more into that longer-term deal. You're not going to pay $50 million if you go 5 years. 4 years is probably the max that you're going to be able to do that. If you go 5, maybe it knocks the AAV down to 45. So then I think the offer actually becomes worse. You don't want to be in that middle area because if you go 5 years, even with opt-outs, if there's injuries, does he want to go back into free agency at 33, 34 years old? Or does he want to be able to go back into free agency in 2 years at 31 and get a 7-year deal? I think that's the way you have to think about it here. That middle zone doesn't really mean anything. But I think the Mets are kind of in a bad spot here if they don't sign Tucker because not only is there no pivot, right? Where did the Mets pivot to in terms of outfield help? They're not going out to get Cody Bellinger. That ship has sailed at this point. I don't think there's any chance that Cody Bellinger ends up a Met. He will go back to the Yankees. I can't say I'm 100% certain, but I think that's a foregone conclusion at this point. He will go back to the Yankees. The Mets aren't going to be interested in offering a long-term deal to Cody Bellinger when they weren't interested in offering a long-term deal for Kyle Tucker. So I think the Bellinger ship has sailed. He'll be back on the Yankees. If he wants 6, 7 years and the Yankees are offering 5, he should take that because the Mets aren't even going to go 5. If they're only going to go 4 for Kyle Tucker, why would they go 5 for Cody Bellinger? It just doesn't make a ton of sense. So that's not the move. It's not going to happen. And now we're all excited about possibly landing the number 1 free agent in the offseason for the second straight year after last year with Soto. So there's no real move that's going to look good after this. So I think the Mets have to be really all in here. Now, I don't think that means they're going to get him, but I think that they've put together a good offer. If it's 4 years, $200 million, they've at least made it very hard for Kyle Tucker to turn that down. And the pivot, if they don't get Tucker, is it Luis Robert? Is it Harrison Bader? Lars Nootbaar? Austin Hayes? Are these the guys that we're going to be excited about? No. There's nobody else that will get you excited in a pivot move. Now, does that now mean, as it's being reported, that if the Mets don't get Kyle Tucker, they'll look maybe more for a trade in terms of, an outfielder? That means Lars Nootbaar, Luis Robert, and then be able to go heavy on pitching and maybe sign Framber Valdez on a short-term high AAV deal? Maybe. But you don't have enough offense right now. And the options available outside of Tucker and Bellinger, who would be an extreme long shot, are non-existent. You don't have another option. And by the way, the Mets didn't have to do this because a couple of weeks ago, not a single person was talking about Kyle Tucker to the Mets. Not a single one. I said the whole offseason that it was never going to happen. When people said, let's sign Kyle Tucker, I said it's never going to happen. The Mets just aren't going to swim in those waters. He's looking for a long-term deal. They're not willing to do it. But they've played the market out a little bit here. And they realize he only has one long-term offer. So this is what I think the Mets are doing going forward. They're staying light on their feet. The trade of Brandon Nimmo makes this possible. The letting Pete Alonso walk, whether it was the right idea or not, we could debate that all day long. But letting Pete Alonso walk and not giving him 5 years makes this possible because they stay light on their feet now. After 2028, the only 2 players on this roster that are signed are Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. So now when a free agent that you didn't think you had a chance to get because you weren't willing to go long term becomes available, you can get creative on a contract because you don't have money committed long term. You don't have, you're not in a situation where organizationally you're spending all this money on bad contracts going forward. So you're able to be opportunistic. And I think with David Stearns, it's always going to be that. They're not going to overpay unless they think a guy is just completely worth it. If his whole contract is going to work out, or at least with the Juan Soto situation, 10 of those 15 years are probably going to be great, and then maybe you get a couple of okay ones, and then you get 3 real bad ones, right? I think that's the way they look at it. If there's a crown jewel that's out there that is available, they're going to go hard after. And then everyone else, they're going to rely on some young guys, and they're going to be opportunistic with free agents that they do like. So I think that's what this situation really shows you. They're able to just be opportunistic, stay light on their feet, and do what they have to do, or what they want to do rather than what they have to do. They don't have to sign Kyle Tucker in their eyes, right? You hear David Stearns talking to the reporters the other day, saying that he understands the Mets fans are frustrated and he feels their frustration. He's heard it from his friends and his family who are Mets fans. But he likes the team, he likes the direction, he likes the organization, the way everything looks with their farm system, with their current Major League roster, although there are tons of holes that need to be filled. He's happy with kind of the team as a whole. So he did also say there will be a couple of improvements before opening day. This isn't necessarily the team that we're going in with. But Kyle Tucker changes the trajectory of this team. You still need a pitcher. I still think you need a starting pitcher, a top-of-the-line guy. And if you get Kyle Tucker, that's not going to be Framber Valdez, which I'm fine with because I don't want Framber Valdez. It's going to come from the trade market, and it should be Freddie Peralta. Now, if the price is too high, whatever, that's not what this is about. And we'll have another video if Kyle Tucker signs today with Toronto. We'll have another video talking about the pivot options, and I expect that to happen quickly. There has to be other irons in the fire. The Mets might have a trade ready to go as soon as Kyle Tucker signs elsewhere. They might have a trade ready to go or a signing, much like the Red Sox did when they lost out on Bregman. The next day they signed Ranger Suarez. I think it will happen quickly. I think there's other things that they have ready to go because we are getting late. We're less than a month away from spring training now. So it's getting late. I think they need to do something. If they don't get Tucker, it's going to hurt a lot of Mets fans because I think a lot of people just kind of got really excited. And I told people not to get too excited. I told myself not to get too excited, but I didn't listen to myself. And I'm at the point now where I'll be disappointed if they don't get him, even though I still think it's unlikely that they will. So that's really all I got today. Hopefully this all ends today. Oh yeah, by the way, Mets did sign Wandy Oxygen, the shortstop, whatever, we don't know what his position will be, the number 2 overall international free agent. Today is the opening day of that. He has signed with the Mets for $3.9 million. They stole him away from the Yankees, and then they almost got him stolen away from them as well. I think the Texas Rangers offered some money. They added another $100,000 to his signing bonus. They did sign him for $3.9 million today. So they've done a lot in the last couple of years in terms of international free agents. And it's a good, this kid's 16 years old. We don't know what he's going to be. It's 7 years before he even probably has a chance of making the major leagues, maybe 5. But yeah, we don't know what he's going to be, but it's still an exciting thing to see the Mets so involved in international free agency where maybe they haven't been so much in the past. It's one of David Stearns' main focuses, scouting and kind of picking those guys up for not a lot of money. So, yeah, like I said, that's all I got. If you're still here, you like this type of content, please subscribe. I did just hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for all my new people and my old people as well. Thank you for subscribing. If you could, subscribe, comment, like, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, until next time, let's go Mets.